Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Discussion. It's me, your host Robert, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Episode 6. This is absolutely Joel's episode. We get the best character development from him and by far the best performance I have ever seen from Pedro Pascal. If Joel is your favorite character, this might very well be your favorite episode. If you haven't been watching these episodes with me every week as I've been uploading, I will do a spoiler-free review of the episode, followed by a spoiler-filled discussion where I talk about all my favorite parts of the episode. Feel free to watch either part of the video if you have or haven't seen the episode yet. We get some fun new side characters in this episode. We also get some exciting returning side characters. So if you've been hanging out for that, this episode absolutely has some great payoffs. The family dynamic between Joel and Ellie continues to grow in this episode. It still continues to be extremely well performed by Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. The chemistry between the two of them is so realistic. It's so compelling, and there is so much of their dialogue ripped straight from the game. The amount of little Easter eggs and callouts to the game in this episode and reenactments are huge. Speaking of reenactments, this episode has my favorite dialogue reenactments so far. Joel has a segment in this episode which really develops his character and shows his mental and physical state on how he's been dealing with the show so far, which really lets Pedro Pascal flex just how amazing of an actor he really is. And then that is followed up by what I just mentioned, the best reenactment of the show so far. Those two scenes back to back from each other is just some of the best writing and performances we've seen. The excellent world building continues with a handful of locations ripped straight from the game, and they look identical. The amount of care and love that was put into building those locations for this episode is currently unmatched. These are the best recreated locations I have seen so far. A lot of emotional character development happens in this episode, but it also leaves you with an extremely intense ending and probably the biggest cliffhanger of the show so far, so I cannot wait for the next episode. If this show has kind of scared you away because of the horror elements, if you want to watch this show for the incredible writing and amazing performances alone without any of the scares, this is absolutely the episode for you. It is pure world building, character arcs, and drama. There are no horror elements in this episode. If you're enjoying the show because of the horror, this might be your least favorite episode. But if you love these characters, the amount of development in this episode alone more than makes up for the lack of horror. Again, spoilers, I'm going to spoil literally the entire episode. So, I mentioned in my review that there is a massive amount of Easter eggs and reenactments in this episode. Because there are literally so many, I'm just going to list through really quickly all my favorite Easter eggs that I came across in this episode, followed by a little bit more of an in-depth conversation of my favorite reenactments or just scenes. Starting with little Easter eggs and or call-outs to the game, I have Joel's map dialogue from the game. In the game, it's a very brutal interrogation scene, but in the show, it is played a lot nicer, with Joel more casually just asking this older couple for directions. Yes, he's still holding them at gunpoint, but it is nowhere near as brutal as the game. But he has repeated dialogue from the game with having them both point on the map for the right location. That was just a really cool little Easter egg. Joel's retirement farm. This is really cool. I don't know about this in the game, but I do know that Ellie ends up retiring on this farm in the second game. So having that be Joel's idea of retirement and then Ellie ending up doing it, it kind of made me think, oh, is that something that Ellie wanted? Or is that something that Ellie did for Joel because it's what he wanted and it was out of respect and the love she had for him? The waterfall that powers the electricity. It's cool that they kind of just walked past it and brushed it off immediately, and they didn't have the whole segment from the game where you have to jump into the water and find a crate that Ellie can jump on, and then you have to push it around and then walk across this bridge. It's kind of a really simple little puzzle, and the show just kind of shrugs it straight off, and then it's like, oh cool, there's that thing from the game. Yeah, let's just keep moving. We're not doing that. I thought that was kind of funny. Is that Dina staring at Ellie? If you don't know who Dina is, she is a main character in the second game and basically Ellie's girlfriend. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, she absolutely looked like Dina, even though we only got to see her for like a couple of seconds. But yeah, be kind of cool if it was, and it could totally be foreshadowing for season 2. I thought it was an interesting change, having it be Ellie's call to stay with Joel instead of Joel changing his mind to stick with Ellie like in the game. I felt like it did work in the show here, but it was a nice, pleasant surprise for us who have played the game and know exactly how that scene was going to go down, kind of just flipping the script. And now I'm just going to go through a few of my favorite scenes and reenactments from the episode. I thought it was really cool that the doggo got a scene. I thought that was really cute, even though the scene was super intense. In the game, you literally just walk past the dog, you give him a pat, and you move on. But yeah, you literally got a scene in the show, and that's really cool. I spoke in my review that there's some identical locations from the game in this episode. The main ones I'm talking about is Jackson and the university. They literally are pulled straight from the game. In the second game, you get to completely explore Jackson. In the first game, you get to completely explore the university, and they are literally identical. I love the amount of care that was put into building these locations for the show. I said in my review as well, this is the best performance I have seen from Pedro Pascal. The two scenes that I was talking about in particular was him talking to Tommy about the road so far, how it has affected him mentally and physically. And then his conversation with Ellie followed up straight after that scene with the argument they have with Joel wanting to give her up and Ellie not wanting to leave Joel. The scene with Joel and Tommy is slightly different from the game. They go into a lot more detail in the show than they do from the game. And it definitely makes it a lot more emotional. And just seeing Pedro Pascal break down like that was incredible. The acting range this man has is just so good. If you're not sold on his version of Joel yet, this episode is absolutely going to do it for you. And the conversation between Joel and Ellie, which is followed up straight after that, that was word for word, scene for scene, straight from the game. And it hit just as hard hearing these lines come from new versions of these characters. I literally almost cried, and I was like, man, I have seen this scene so many times in the game and it still hit me. Like, I knew it was coming and it still hit me so hard. Like, I think it was a mix of like sad tears for how emotional the scene was, but it was also happy tears just to see this scene, one of the most iconic scenes from the game, reenacted to perfection, not a single thing being changed from the game. So the university had the monkeys, which was pretty fantastic. I think the only downside was that the university was full of infected as well in the game, and you have to clear them out. But yeah, that definitely would have been a huge chunk of this episode, and it was absolutely swapped out for character development. They definitely pulled back on the action. There was some action here, but it was right at the end of the episode. Speaking of that action though, Joel's injury wasn't quite as serious or as brutal as the game, as where the spike goes literally all the way through him, through his back and out of his stomach. But I'm not gonna lie, it definitely had just as much of an impact with the show. You think Joel's completely fine, he looks down, realizes he's stabbed, and he pulls it out and starts bleeding immediately, and you're like, dude, what the heck, man? Probably shouldn't have pulled that out. But yeah, just as much of an impact. And then him falling off the horse, just like in the game, and the perfect place to leave the episode on like the biggest cliffhanger. This episode was 100% Joel's episode with the amount of development he got. And next episode will 100% be Ellie's episode. I'm sure they'll do her flashback just like the first game's DLC, explaining what she was up to before the game took place, and having Ellie do what she does in that segment of the game as well. I'm not going to go into that because of spoilers for the next episode, but yes, it's very exciting and it will totally be Ellie's episode. I absolutely love this episode. It's definitely one of my favorite episodes so far. What did you think of this week's episode? Is it one of your favorites? I'd just like to say a huge thank you to my family and my friends who watch these YouTube videos with me every week. It means so much to me. I put so much time and effort into these, even though I know they don't get hardly the amount of views the rest of my videos get. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, a subscribe goes a huge mile for me. It is literally just one little click for you, but it means so much to my channel. So yeah, if you like what you see or you want to see some more pop culture stuff, feel free to click that subscribe button and stick around, and I will see you in the next video.